Welcome back. The last term of today's presentation is something called a pechakucha. And it's Japanese for chit-chat. And it was invented in Tokyo, I think, 10 years ago by two architects. Maybe because they were tired of listening to long, boring architectural lectures. So the whole idea of the original pechakucha, that's the one we keep today, is that you have one slide for 20 seconds and you have 20 slides. So if you're good at mathematics, then you can calculate how many minutes that is. So the slide will change after 20 seconds, and when we get to slide number 20, it will loop to the start and then we'll stop. So there's no goodbye or whatever, it's all up to the young people to say whatever they want to say, and it's we don't know what they say. It's pretty cool. To help me with this, I have a group here of young people. I'll do the first group, and when they've finished, we'll have a little more chit chat on what they were doing for 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have group 2, and group 2 will be another 4 nice talent, and that will be run by Rama Chopash. No, what's this? Korpesh, who is an associate professor here at Parsons. You can read his bio. He's into everything. And the good thing, he's also into Danish design. So, he's actually been to Denmark, visited Denmark, seen what's going on, and have quite cool ideas about Danish design. So he will interview the last 4, and then when that's finished, then we all just, the first 4 and me will just join the whole thing, and then we'll have all 8 talents, and Ram and I will do questions, and then we'll finish it off that way. So is that clear? So I think the designers are quite nervous that they're here in New York, have to present, and then this came up with this stupid idea about a pechakucha. I put them on a bit of pressure, but I think it's I've seen it before, I tried it before, and I know it's tough to do, but it's good fun, because you can either make it or you can break it, right? But I think you're all, all 8 of you that we chose have so much talent. Some of you have won the design award. It's the first time this year that we have young people who can win a special talent prize. Before we never really appreciate talent. We'll do that from now on. And then we've taken some from that who was there. The schools could nominate you. So we've taken some of the nominated, and then we've taken other young designers. And when Susanne, who is here, she is the woman behind it all. When we were discussing who should we take and who shouldn't we, because we said, okay, this is New York, this is a city with an attitude, who can do it? And who can totally, when things are not working and everything, who can go through? So we picked the 8, and we know they're the 8 cool ones. We know they're the talented ones. We know that they could be the Finn Juhls of next generation, probably more cool than Finn Juhl. So are we ready? We'll have a short presentation by me, who you are before you start. So we'll start with Tia. Here. Very good. You're ready?
Yes. My name is Tia Ube. I'm an industrial designer, and I graduated from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts, the School of Design, in January of this year. And this presentation, I will unfold my master project for you. The project I will guide you through resulted in a product called Nestie. And Nestie is a product nesting premature children that are facing intensive care in an incubator. And the presentation, I will look more into how Nestie has come to life, more than why everything is the way it is. My initial approach to the project was quite loose. I wanted to explore the limits and possibilities of design within a field far from my own. I contacted the Hans Christian Andersen Hospital in Denmark, and luckily for me, they were willing to go into a project and open the doors for me. I spent a month in nurses' and doctors' footsteps. Walking around dressed in a white coat helped me to blend in and get first-hand experiences. During my time as a nurse, I was introduced to everything from dislocated hips to care procedures and waiting rooms. With the large collection of problems, some design-related, some not, my task was to identify that single problem that I could change for the better. What triggered me the most was my experiences in the neonatal intensive care unit, and that became my workplace. What I'd been witness to in the neonatal unit was a determination from nurses to care individually for the children. I saw how delicate and sensitive the children were, and that life in an incubator is a very disturbed life due to the necessary treatment and electronic monitoring of the children. My observations were centered around the child's position in the incubator and the nurse's attempt to fulfill the need for comfort and closeness. The products available to assist in the nursing situation and the possibilities of shielding against environmental stress were quite inadequate. And with all the insight and gained knowledge, I went back to my desk to try to get a general view. The combination of insight through observation, interviews, and hand-on experiences gave me that diverse and complete look on the problem and the possibility to act on reality. As part of the analytical process, I looked into products available today, trying to understand why they weren't used. There are products on the hospital shelf, but what I saw was that instead of using those, nurses preferred rolling towels and trying with fabrics to make the child feel comfortable. With an enormous amount of insight, I was left with a wealth of demands and wishes for the product. And in order for me to prioritize, I put my goal into words and made a clear hierarchy of what needs the design solution should meet. And the three key elements in order for the product to be a success were that it should be supporting the child's development of sensory motor skills, it should be shielding the child from environmental stress, and it should be assisting the nurse in the care situation. Throughout this process, and especially in the beginning of the product development, I went back to nurses and doctors to get feedback. The response and input on sketches and early mock-ups and models kept me on the right track, and this way I was quite certain that my decisions were made on validated ground. Early in the process, it seemed quite logic that what the children needed were an imitation of their mother's womb. But after the iterative design process and continuous dialogue with nurses, it became quite clear that the right design would be a fine balance of stimulation and shielding. The direction of the project had two tracks. One centered on shielding the child, and the other on supporting the child's body parts. Just as any other child or patient, premature children have individual needs, and from this arose the idea as a nurse as a co-designer. By developing a mattress depressed in the middle with flexible wings, nurses could, on a daily basis, add individual pressure to the child's body. Closeness and body pressure makes the child sleep and rest more peacefully, leaving it with energy to grow and develop. The parents were never a primary scope. Nevertheless, they are going through a very difficult time in their life, and they need to feel that their child is in good hands. With the shape, reference to a baby carriage, and the embracing look, the product tells a story of trust and dignity. Nestie is to be looked upon as a concept, built on field research and collaboration across professions. And with the growing number of children born premature and our ability to save these children weighing only 400 grams, I believe we are obliged to do more and do better for the children, for their lives afterwards. Nestie has the potential of adding a new holistic dimension to neonatal intensive care, optimizing the care procedures and the children's chances of a normal life. The purpose of Nestie is simply to support the existing procedures and the nurse's knowledge of what is in the children's best interest. To sum up, I will say in a retrospective that humbleness, along with an open mind, has been the key, has driven the design process, and the interdisciplinary approach and collaboration has been what's left me with a product that nurses see great potential in. And this is what I chose to bring here today. A quick introduction, and please feel welcome to visit my website if you want to see more than 6 minutes and 40 seconds of this project. Yeah.
Fantastic. You made it. Next speaker will be Anne Danielsen. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Cool.
Hi, my name is Anne, and I will show as well my final project from Kolding School of Design in Denmark. I've chose to work with medication treatment at the public hospitals, and I chose that because I have a great passion for service design and the healthcare sector in general, so it was an obvious choice for me to collaborate with the local hospital. A Danish study shows that 10% of all patients discharged from a Danish hospital has been exposed to an adverse situation. And a great number of these adverse situations is because of medication errors. So I thought it would be interesting to look at the medical journey at a medicine department and see where I, as a designer, can make some changes. This is the product they're using. This is a medicine trolley. It's designed in the 50s, and back then it fitted very well with the way the nurses are working, but today it's a whole different story. In this case, there's a nurse handing out medicine to the patient, but she's leaving the trolley out of sight. And then there's the whole design aspect of it. The content in a medicine trolley doesn't really fit with the dividing system. As you see here, the IV medicine and injections and other medicals like that doesn't really fit into these into this dividing. And then I looked a lot about the patient experience. There's a big gap between real patient safety and then the patient experience of patient safety. So I thought it would be interesting to see what is the visual input that the patient gets when being medicated. And as you see here, the trolley is kind of getting into the way to have a great interaction with the patient, whereas in this case, the nurse gets way closer to the patient because she's carrying the medicals by hand instead of having the trolley in the way of having the interaction. And this is a short movie. I speeded it up a bit because this is Peter Kucha, but it shows very well how she's working around with the trolley. And in this case, she's only going to hand out for 2 patients, but she's bringing medicine for the whole department anyway. And now you're going to see how she's packing it back into the medicine room without even bringing any medicine to any patients. And all those findings I presented to my board at the local hospital with nurses and doctors, and they were very good at adding a lot of insights and comment on the concept development I'd make, taking base of all my findings. And they have been a part of the process the whole time. It was obvious that I didn't see a need of a trolley, but I couldn't really tell what was the alternative product-wise, so I made an alternative in the concept instead, and the needed or the required parts in the concept was this, an updated labeling system, a permanent dividing system, as you see here. Today they're using the medicine trolley to divide into each patient, but I thought it would be even more interesting to also divide it into the different time slots of handing out the medicine, as you see there. That gives a way better overview for the nurse when she's going to hand out the medicine. When she's handing it out, there's 3 different ways of doing it. With IV medicine and injection, that's an isolated job, only 1 patient at a time. If she's going to carry 2 or 3 cups for 2 or 3 patients, she can carry that by hand. But in cases she's going to hand out medicine for more patients, maybe in an evening shift, she needs some sort of product for handing it out. And then after all this concept development, the actual design phase could begin. I did a lot of sketching, 2D and 3D, made some rapid prototyping and testing different sizes, shapes, colors, the ergonomics, what kind of material fits with with the medical world. And the final product consists of 2 parts. This is one of them, the drawer insert. That's a permanent drawer in the medicine room where you divide all the dispensed medicine into the different time slots. The blue sliders divides it into the different times. The other product is the portable tray. So when you're going to hand it out for the patient, they're using this tray instead of the trolley. That gives a better overview of the few patients you're handing out to instead of bringing all the medicine for the whole department at once. And I'll just shortly run you through a product journey at a medical department. This is Diana, she's a nurse. She's going to take care of the medicine that day, but she has some colleagues to help her when she's going to hand it out. She's standing in the medicine room and dispensing today's prescribed medicine. She puts the label on the little cup. All the information that before were on the trolley is now placed closer to the medicine. She puts it on the cup, so both the patient information and the location of the patient and the time for handing it out is placed very close to the medicine. So if she makes a mistake, she's able to catch herself in that mistake later. She puts the small cups into the drawer insert, so she's able to the whole time have an overview of what she's going to hand out for the patients at what time. Those blue barriers are movable, so if she has more medicine for 10 o'clock one day, she can move it so she has a bigger area. You can also see in one end there's a larger room for non-cups like injection medicine and IV medicine. When she's finished with dividing today's medicine, she can just close the drawer and do something else. Often they get interrupted in their work, so this is a good way of just closing it down instead of having the trolley standing the whole time. When she's going to hand out the medicine, she uses the portable tray instead of bringing everything out of the room like she did before with the trolley. So she only takes her own medicine and leaves the medicine for her colleagues and leaves the medicine for later at the day in the insert, and then she uses this portable tray to hand out for the patients. And I think it's very important to say in the end that this is just a product that's a result of a whole new way of handing out medicine and rethinking the whole concept of patient safety when it comes to medication treatment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mads Damkjær is the next one.
Yes, that's right. My name is Mads Damkjær. I'm managing partner at Good Morning Technology, and I'm originally trained industrial designer, and now I'm also taking my MBA to kind of balance the both sides of the brain, right? So that's a good idea. I'll use this 6 minutes to chit chat about inspiration. Oops. And one of the things I'm really inspired by is traveling. The demographics shows that many people are going to all the cities. This is Hong Kong, a city where they use a lot of energy by lighting, for example. And that made us work on, this is a lamp archetype for Luceplan, an Italian manufacturer, where we it's going to be really short about it, but actually the idea is that it's reused materials. We have implemented a socket that can be used in all lamps, and then you can just screw it on in all your apartments and lamps at home. We work a lot with LEDs, and have been here at White Design Now actually some years ago in New York. And talking about New York, we actually did. Is it 3-4 years ago at least, or 5 years ago? We did a project for Manhattan, the Park and Recreation Department of Park and Recreation, about how to integrate bike schemes at Manhattan. And I can tell you a little bit more about it later, what it meant for another project. We work with. Nearly, you mentioned the circular economy. That's a thing. We use some of it in our own ways to designing projects and products and services, and and for example, in different cases, this is actually Danish grapes, and that's pretty nice for wine, for example. But it means actually that it's. I mean, this is a sign from our environment that things are changing, and that's something that we of course have to do something about. We do with, for example, Decor, a company that makes bus shelters. We have made a new way of making oases in the cities, green networks, so we can actually have gardens in other levels, and we do that in a diverse company, in a diverse studio with many different employees and competences, and we have 3 partners there, lots of good employees, and this is one of our former partners who's on his way to space. Now this is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Albert Camus. You can read it. It's about if we don't have any authentic creativity in our culture, then it doesn't work. So that's what we work for every day. And talking about systems and also businesses, we did a project for Ambu, or with Ambu. It's a product actually for surgery, but it's also a new business plan for a hole in the market, and it was also a new service of how to integrate and implement different different business models. And this is actually what we do a lot. We design business models. We also do it for our own on the side companies. Often with some kind of this is for coming parts, and that's why we thought, how can we actually do a better a company that will improve bicycling in the world. And this is the first product, Bike Porter. Actually, non-use of chrome. It's hand polished, and that of course it decreased our profit, but we love that. And now we sell in more than 20 countries with these new products that we call it mash-up products. So we use different. This is a bike light with magnets that's not seen before, and I mean it's just small innovations that fits. For coming parts, we also have developed a term we call crowd commitment, and that's something we write about. Also, and we talk about it, and that's also why I put this Danish Design Association, because that's a big part of why we should integrate in the design community. This is a picture from Palm Springs in the desert, and it shows that it's this summer, and it shows that it's not only in Denmark. We have windmills. And I'm just really interested in renewable energy. So we made with the Danish Design Center and a lot of other people and partners. We made a project called Trash Lane. It's about how to integrate and reuse, actually taking trash to and make it to resources instead of trash. So you can see how people actually, when they are driving, they throw the trash down these trash tubes, and actually for each year, one trash tube can make energy for 4 houses. And then at the same time, of course, it's fun and makes people wonder. 2 years ago, one of our ideas became a company, Future Forward, where it's a small company, but we develop and try to get venture capital into and sell it to projects that can help people off-grid in Africa and India. This is my last slide. I just came from MIT this yesterday, and they have some really interesting people, and it just shows that I'm inspired by people, and people can create change, no matter if they're engineers, designers, or whatever, presidents. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll finish off the first round with Mr. Bakke, Anders Bakke.
Thank you. Yes, hello. I am Mr. Bakke. I have a Master of Science in Industrial Design and from Aalborg University in Denmark. And I'd like to spend my 6 minutes and 40 seconds on this introduction and some few slides on design, my thesis project, and finally a quick conclusion. If you Google Danish design, you'll mostly find furnitures and lamps and maybe a few wooden monkeys. They're all very transparent and honest in their use of materials and functionality. And their purpose is quite well defined, except maybe for the monkey. But today, everything is connected and the world is getting increasingly complex. And that counts for the challenges as well. So that rubs off on the role of designer to be more that of a facilitator or catalyst, and include more new disciplines in their work. So, this is my education. It's a design engineer hybrid, which means that compared to classic Danish design educations, there's a bigger focus on the technical aspects. And we work in groups of 3 to 5 people in 4 months periods to get around all the important aspects here we go. Okay, this is my final project, mobile antennas that I would like to show how I work. And I did this with my 2 teammates, Anne-Sophie and Troels, who couldn't be here today. But it's about mobile antennas, which are these large boxes that are installed on the roofs throughout our cities. You see them here. And our point of departure was that there is an explosion in data traffic because everybody's having a smartphone and they want to be streaming YouTube all the time. So there's a bigger need for capacity in the wireless system, and we said, is this the direction we're going into, the antenna jungle? And besides having a smartphone and having first-hand experience of the curse of being without coverage, we knew nothing about the telecom industry. So we quickly established contact to a range of experts to let them share their knowledge, and they also became co-creators, since whatever solution we would end up with would have to be accepted within their domain of the industry. So this is some of our research. We looked into the relations between the different actors, the architecture of the antenna systems, some new technologies of, this is not very new, of antenna systems, and some technical stuff such as what is a radio wave. And the research led us into, it made it become possible to list the needs of the key stakeholders, the government, the municipalities, the mobile network operators, and the citizens. And overall, they have the same need. They want better mobile coverage, but when you look a little more into it, they have a lot of conflicting interests. It also became possible to list the pains of the system, the challenges of the overall system, and the challenges of the products within the antenna architecture itself. And these challenges could be transformed into demands for the future solutions, together with the needs of the key stakeholders that I just showed before. Okay, so here are some concepts. We had a concept for a very literally green concept where you plant a tree for each antenna, or a very interactive and informative concept to change perception maybe. Of course, the environmentally friendly concept, you gotta have that one. And then a concept using small antennas. And it led us into 2 different directions where we could either focus on improving the current system, or we could introduce new technologies and new way of implementing antennas in the urban space. And of course, the second direction sounded a lot more interesting and a lot more promising. So, luckily, we found out that the total cost of ownership of these interesting new sites, only 24% of them was the actual equipment, which basically meant that we could do something about the remaining 76%. So not only was it the most interesting choice, it was a justified choice to continue working on. So we kept exploring the urban space, looked into solutions for facades, for light poles, fences, traffic lights, rain stripes, and this street lighting, which is showed to be have quite some potential. And here we go. The reason for that is that in Denmark we have a lot of street lights, and they are installed in this wire system throughout the cities, and as a consequence of a European directive about LED lighting, Denmark is planning to exchange all these lamps. So we asked, why not make a new lamp where we can install antennas as well. So we did some additional research on existing street lamps, involved some new experts to help us combine these different technologies. And since the final concept was now chosen, we could it made sense to look more into the aesthetics and the expression of the final solution. We did some further detailing of the concepts and looked into the inner configuration of the antenna street lamp. Did some use scenarios, some business models, some design for manufacturing, and some simulations so that the lamp would not explode and fall down through people's car windows. So the final solution was this new deployment strategy involving new public sites, a new mobile broadband network that could easily be scaled, a business model for built on partnerships, and a completely redesigned street lamp with an integrated antenna system and energy-saving LED light. And the lamp itself is divided in two parts, an antenna part and an LED part, because it's different people who will be maintaining the two parts. It also meets the requirements of being able to install and position antennas on a remote location, but also mount and maintain the LEDs on site. So, for my final 20 seconds, I'll just say that there are plenty of interesting and important challenges to address today, and I think that designers, industrial designers, have the tools and therefore also the responsibility to try to make tomorrow just a little bit better than yesterday.
Thank you very much. I think we should give you a microphone. You can pass it around. I think what the audience just saw was how you're working, and I mean, it's not about the product, but it's also about how do you actually get to your final result. Do you think that this is something you can export, or is it is it your methodology, or is it your product you think you can go to New York with?
Well, I think it's both, but I chose to show my process since it's such a big part of the product. I would have never thought of the product if I didn't have the process that I had. So I think what I can do is both the process, and then the product kind of grows out of the process. So there isn't one thing without the other, I think, yeah.
Also, I think that the products are of course really important, but it is the process that we can integrate also in all other kind of professional industries and professions. So that's actually the really important thing. That's how to inspire and to make these methods and this process integrated into other professions as well. As we talked about earlier about integrating and working multidisciplinary between.
I think when I see your 4 projects that in a way they're very, very social. Have you always been working like that, or is that something that matured doing when you started your project? I mean, your project is very difficult for people if you don't get the full story, because I think it's so deep. There's so many other projects. I mean, you can work there for the next 20 years and we have you, Anders, with the lamps, the mobile phone, and again Mads, who's the whole biking thing for the mail, that we can actually have a mail, bike box in front of it, and again with the kids. So is that something that you always had, the social aspect, or is that something that came to you during your education?
Personally, I just found it very interesting to work with professionals that don't think the same way as I do as a designer. They have a totally different toolbox, and matching and working in that cross field between different professionals brings something that I'm not capable of doing myself as a designer. And I think, no, don't have any more.
Well, nothing is isolated anymore, so you have to talk to contact all the other professions, and I think it's a necessity to do something that will actually have an effect in the real world today.
So how do you see yourself in the tradition you come from and the future? I know it's a huge question, but if you can shorten it down you know, what is it you learned from your past that you can move into the future?
Yeah, that is a big question.
Yeah, but you have about 20 seconds.
20 seconds. I'm used to that now. No, but I mean, I think to integrate the social thinking in development and production and design. But I mean, that should be obvious from now on. That's not only for designers, but for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's too big, so you can relax a little bit. So we get 4 new young designers who'll do their pechakucha. So thank you. We will have them up later, so if we can get the 4 new ones, and Rama will take over and guide you through
the pronunciation of the Danish names. Yeah, that would be great. Johannes Grove.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Johannes Grove, and I graduated from the architecture school in Aarhus, a small city in Denmark. And actually, we've heard a lot of Danish design, but I've chosen to speak about something completely different, which is jazz design. No, it's like 10% of my time I try to do something different than solving all the world's problems. So, and when I do that, I have like a working title, which I prefer to call jazz design. Like sometimes it should be not that serious; it should be more like actually having fun and like playing music. So this is what my slides will be about. This is one of the project where I actually it was all about. One day I had this idea of this small joint, and it ended up just being playing about how to join things that I spent that day instead of doing my homework, which wasn't that good, but it ended up in a lamp anyway. So this is one of the projects I'll tell you a little about. The other one here is I call Cone 180, where you are able to like turn the lampshade 180 degrees, and I was actually doing a project about plywood at my school. But then again, I got an idea for a lamp, and then it just took off. And I think we should remember to do that sometimes, to give it space. So what is this jazz design that I, when I spend my time doing something I shouldn't do? I think that this allegory about music is quite good. I remember that Goethe, the German writer, he said that architecture is frozen music. And at some point, I think it's a good way of thinking on design as well. So it should be like jamming with your best friend. Sometimes I remember that. Like it should be playful in that way. It should be like swinging. It's about in a music term swinging. But yeah, that. that you have this edge that everything fits together, but still sometimes try to make a bit of an edge on it at the same time. Where then simplicity. Now we've seen a lot of Danish design, which is really famous for the simplicity, but it's also simplicity in the way that it should be easy to understand from people, that we should actually are able to understand our surroundings and the world that we're living in, and not just. So that's some of the thing I like to play with. What's the next? Yeah, it's about like if you hear like that, just the first note or something in a song from one of your favorite musicians, you recognize it right away. And I think that design, you have to think about that as well. That you're not just making another thing pleasing the whole crowd, but you have this edge and try to have your voice in it. And then, of course, synergy is, this like we have to be more people doing this together, and sometimes it should just be playful, and then you will get to another level. And then the solo in the song, I think that's some of the things that I really like to work with. That finding one little detail and then give it space, like letting the rest of the members of the band play a little less loud, so that you see that one detail and just concentrate on that. And then again, interaction. I could have said maybe something else. No, it's about storytelling. I would say that the objects we create actually also some kind of, in some way, speaks to you and gives you another level in it. This one here is pretty simple. Just I have just combined this normal hanging lamp with a bracket and a strap, making it suddenly possible to direct the light where you need it. So it's like you have the quality of a floor lamp, that you could have it above a desk or anything without taking floor space. So that's that one little detail. That's the soul of that project, and then everything else is just he'll see that you'll have both functions. So it's just one little idea, and sometimes I think it's nice that you give yourself an hour of spare time and just follow that idea, though you're actually supposed to do something else and save the world. Which is the same thing about this one. I was like playing with that little joint there, so it's actually just a rubber ring holding the stand and the arm of the lamp together, and at that point I just thought that was such a good idea that I didn't really need to design much more on the rest of the lamp, because that little detail will actually do it all. So it just the gravity of the weight of the arm of the lamp just squeeze it together and hold them together, which also means that the function is then all solved in this one little thing, because when you lift it up, you're able to move it up and down the stand, and changing the height of the lamp, and when you change the length of the arm from the center from the joint, then the angle will change. So that's actually that little design, that little idea that just ran off. And then again, because now that they're not combined, then I did a version so that it's divided the stand in 3 different parts, so you can use the same lamp for a floor lamp, a smaller floor lamp, and also actually just a little table lamp. So yeah, that was I just wanted to say that sometimes we shouldn't save the whole world, so give it a break sometimes.
From a secret Tribeca basement comes Søren Rose.
Thank you. We're actually not in the basement at the moment, but we are a multidisciplinary design agency. We have a studio in Copenhagen and one in New York. I'm trying to do a very narrow presentation today about a method where we try to use our architectural projects and interior projects to incubate and make commercial viable furnitures. And this is a co-op that I'm gonna show to you today, that we've been working with Della Sparta, which some of you might know. It's a British-Portuguese company, very high-end, works with Matthew Hilton and Autobahn and a lot of other designers. We are sort of like the Scandinavian voice. When we started the studio in 2008, we were kind of very lucky, and we got this assignment to do a penthouse with a rooftop on Park Avenue South. And I've literally been working on it every day for 4 years. We're 3 months out to completing the project now. And we're doing everything. We're doing the handles. We're doing, for example, the bathtub, working with Bisasa, working with Dinesen, working with some of the best, in my opinion, materials that we have been able to find and scoop up. And it's been really interesting. It's been very tight and very close and intimate with the client and his wife. And so everything has been very thought through. I've don't think normally you would spend that many hours doing a bathtub, but it's been sort of down to the prototype, the mock-ups, and the clients come into town trying to sit in it, seeing if it's too big, too small. We go to Verona, we pick the stone and find the quarry where we want it from. For example, here we've been working with all the details, mirroring. The sinks come down from Testi, which actually produce Castiglione's Arco lamp, which a lot of you might know just visiting the factory by itself. By the way, it's very interesting. So all the detailing, the joints, trying to bring like the traditional Danish craftsmanship to what we do has been very important for us. And in this process, being this decadent about details, at some point I've always been a bit huge admirer about Philip Johnson and Mia van der Rohe. And I remember being 15 years old and seeing the rebuilt pavilion. And I was wondering if we could get the same marble. And I asked a guy in Verona, said, I want to find this marble. How do we start? And we set out on a research tour and wanting to see if we could find this. And we actually succeeded. We had a little guy in his Citroen driving up the mountain after the snow had melted, and he knocked with his little rubber hammer, and he said, yeah, I think we can do 50 more slabs. So we're actually having the same, it's much more aggressive, and because it was at a point where they stopped, but it's very beautiful, and we just put it up at the apartment. So anyway, using this and talking a little bit about the kind of incubation is that it's not something that we just invented, right? Because the Royal Copenhagen had the egg chair and the pavilion obviously had the pavilion chair. But we sort of said, why don't we figure out everything, right? I mean, it's the chandelier, it's the gentleman's valet where they hang his jacket on, it's the master bed, it's the guest room bed, it's side tables, lamps, and just start up on this kind of adventure. And we're a team of 14 people at the moment, both architects and interior designers. So it's kind of been a very cool way of using these people's drama of what they, for example, saying, why don't we create like a super tall, beautiful chair where she can hang her dresses over? Or, for example, we have a little house up on the rooftop. So why don't we create a chandelier which is sort of very simple, minimalistic, that you can look through because you don't want to obstruct the view of beautiful skyline of Manhattan. And everything is very interesting. We talked a little bit about manufacturing during today, and actually Della Spada, they actually manufacture. So we get to go down to this playground, this wonderful huge factory, and produce all these furnitures. We started the co-op with them in 2010, and we launched the first edition of furnitures at London Design Festival last year. So the collection is only 1 year old. At this moment, we have 35 pieces that we've designed and that we're working with. A huge part of how Della Spada do their things is that they go to all the trade fairs. So we get to go to ICFF, where we actually won the jury's special jury awards for best furnitures. And we go to London Design Festival, we go to Milan, we go to Korček, we go to Paris. So it's a huge sort of like part of, showing the world, getting feedback from buyers and feedback from people like you that are interested in design, and kind of gives us a sort of direction of where we're going. Actually, I mean, social media is such a big part. I remember I had spotted that Aaron Britt, this guy, he's the senior editor of Dwell magazine. So I had sort of like spotted how he looked. So I like fetched him when he was there and invited him over, and we got this picture where he's sitting in the chair, and he ended up writing a big piece about the collection and retweeted us and gave us like 1,000 followers in an instant. This is a bunch of the new furnitures. We're actually trying also to deviate. Obviously, the client we can only use them for this much. So some of the furnitures might not come out of that context, but still could be used in the context, if you know what I mean. So for example, the gentleman's valet, where you can hang your jacket on, was actually one my mom and me made for my dad more than 13 years ago with a local craftsman in the little town I come from. This is our booth for Paris, which is going to be a really big show for us. It's in January, and where we're showing 6 new pieces. And this is how the pieces look when they're used in our interior decorations. So that's it.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Amanda Betts.
Hello, my name is Amanda Betts and I work in the field between art design and architecture, and I'm originally educated as an architect. I would like to introduce two pieces I've made for you today and tell you about the process behind it. The first piece is one for Le Klint, an old classic Danish lampshade firm who do pleated lamps, and this started as an experiment and an interest in folding and spanning from 2 to 3 dimensions, scaling the fold, really pushing the material into different directions and using the potential. So looking at it as architect, starting perforating it, exploring every possibility, and looking at it as also as maybe it could be the final result, so I could work with the design between my hands without having to contact anyone else. So I ended up with a prototype completely impossible to fold. It was like 2.5 weeks for me to do it, but I was pretty insisting, and it was not intended to be a lampshade, but once I had it, I thought, okay, I'll try to contact Le Klint, and they showed interest. And at that point, I went to visit their workshop, and it was really, really fascinating because this is a very historic place in Denmark, and the Klint family have developed embossing machines and brass rollers to actually do their pleated lampshades. And it was very inspiring for me, of course, and I learned a lot. I went back and looked at what I had actually been doing and analyzing my pattern. I had implied a straight surface, which is hard to fold because you crack the straight surface easily. You cannot pleat, you cannot press the fold. But I really investigated this and managed to make a foldable pattern, which we cut out on their laser cutter. I had done everything by hand and learning myself the craft of folding, which was quite important. And this machine can cut holes and crease at the same time, which so the perforation has not been done in the history of Le Klint before because the embossing machines cannot cut. And then finally meeting Sonia, who is my new love. I try to explain to her that this is really true, but she doesn't believe me. It's very Danish. and they started pleating my pattern in a different way, which actually worked much better. So we had a great collaboration, and this was because I could change the pattern. I had learned myself to understand how to develop it, and we ended up in 2 days actually when I went there to do the complete shade in 2 versions. And it has this inner sparkle of light rather than casting the light out, and the octagons, like as you can see, is like the main feature of the lamp. And then back again to the experiment, doing furniture in one piece, pushing the material to open up a field of possibilities to, as well, this was to show my lamp, and I accommodated it with this pleated interior. So what I was really actually annoyed about with the Le Klint shade was it was such a big package. Why did I pleat and pleat? And I had this big package, and I really thought I want to do something as a flat pack. And at one point I had a coincidence with the cutter plotter, and it made 2 modules I could assemble. I looked at it, it was a mistake, and I started pursuing the idea. And this dome in Isfahan and mosque, Sheikh Lutfallah, gave me the foundation to actually develop my modular system, spanning again from 2 to 3 dimensions. So it's a universal pattern, and you can say what I do when I work, and I set up a field of inspiration rather than defining the object from the beginning. So having the dome, having the modular system, having an idea about making a flat pack has been the working field. So opening up possibilities rather than closing them down from the beginning. And again, here I ended up with a prototype, and this is being developed in the moment. Not that one, but that was one I showed to Art Technica, a Los Angeles-based company, and that's a module. This piece is nice, but it falls apart. So I've been developing a lot on that, and the socket holder should come flat packed as well. And this became the core point of the lamp and has given a logic to the whole system. And it actually starts also simulating the dome, and which I find quite fascinating. And also the cone you can see here, you assemble it. It might look complicated, but it has a very logic repetitive system. I've tried all the time to keep the delicacy of each module, to make it look delicate, and test it out. Did a lot of prototypes, and I could have the whole process in my own hands, and actually do it all by myself. And yes, and there were like different things, like getting the modules down, not having too many, getting the right light out, and etc. And we skipped some and ended up with this. We have ended up with this final version, and I really think it's very nice as well to see how the first idea about the mosque and combining it with Danish design and the Scandinavian touch appears in the final shade. So the shade is somehow more than just a lampshade. Well, that's my hope at least. And the idea, it's also a statement about combining cultures and yeah, I think it shines through that this is a Scandinavian Iranian lamp, and also the package, as you can see, is really quite slim fit, and it's a tiny step in a sustainable direction, and it's recyclable plast. Of course, my next projects to come will be more sustainable, yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trolls, I'm going to let you pronounce your name.
Okay. My name is Troels Svendsen. I'm an architect and designer, and I am very occupied by the relationship between space, architecture, objects, and not at least human beings, and also about the human perception of shape. And actually I have made some theoretical reflections about that, called Directions in Space. It will take too long to come around it, but actually I found out that any word we are using, almost any word we are using about shape, are related to those 6 main directions we see here, which are again related to gravity and to the body. I hope some of my examples here will tell more about what I mean. I try to, in my furniture, try to give possibilities to shape, to give, to make different directions in the space, and by that giving architects and interior designers possibilities, free possibilities to shape their own furnitures for specific spaces, for specific rooms, by adding simple elements, and by that changing directions all the time in the space, and making very multifunctional furniture in that way. Water lily is one example. A huge additive seating with only 2 elements, and you can connect them and make a kind of organic contrast to huge rectangular spaces. And also Bloom are made from some of the same sorts. And here you can also add more than one element to each element, so you can change directions in the space actually and make huge seating landscapes, which can be very specific for a specific room. This one, called Mind Mover, is an attempt to make a space in the space where 2 people can sit and discuss or brainstorming, and they should be better to cooperate by also having to cooperate about the moving this furniture. A chair can also be a freestanding sculpture with many directions in it, but even though it also has to be part of a room, which we will see in the next picture. And actually, it also has to be able to multiply and to stand relatively messy, and even then look really quiet and not disturbing. This is actually in a space that I've designed myself, an extension to a rather boring house, from which you were not able to see the beautiful wood on the other side of the street. So I made this taller building, and inside that I made a platform from which you could see the forest. Talking about the forest and the woods, I made this Yggdrasil furniture, which is a more narrative, symbolic furniture, telling a story about the tree of life and also of the development of society from the roots and to the modern material in the top. It has always been a challenge for me to minimize the use of material and to use the nature forces, not at least the gravity, to help the construction, to minimize the construction. Here it a bridge-inspired long table, and here a long chair actually, where you can move the back and make different sitting positions, and it will lock itself automatically as it gets loaded by the weight of the sitting human. And also here we have a furniture very clearly talking about direction and space. It's one direction, but at the same time the furniture, the bench, is playing with gravity, using the gravity to lock the construction, and at the same time appearing kind of weightless, especially when you see it like this. So it becomes very light, very simple, very minimalistic, and you can again compose the furniture, the length of the bench, for specific rooms and spaces. So again, it's a kind of a freedom for using it differently. And here, my grip table, which in some sense are my, for the time being, synthesis about playing with the gravity and with direction in space. And this table actually won the Design Award 2012 in this category about furnitures. And you can see here also the central beam is very, very strong, and you can create very long tables with very few suspensions, very few legs, making a freedom again in furnishing. And you can also add more beams and more legs and make very long tables, really having a meaning in the space. We really have an influence into a specific space. And again, you can compose this in different lengths. Need to talk about this central beam being the point about it, and that's true, because the only thing that locks the construction is the gravity. So as more loaded the table becomes, as more stable it actually gets. The last picture is a new table here made for an exhibition at Thorvaldsens Museum, and I think this picture is talking about very much directions in space and about light. And I think we should never forget as designers that first we have the light, then we have the space, and last we have the objects.
Thank you. Neela, that was a great grouping and separation. This morning when I was crossing the crosswalk with Dean Lewis, I was with a group of Danes, and we had a lot of things, and David and I ran to go across the street, and all of the Danes and I remembered being in Copenhagen and doing the same thing. One evening, and a group of Danes said, as I walked across the street got very upset, and I turned and I said, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Danish." And a woman spoke to me in English and said, what if a child saw you? And I looked around and there's a medieval street and no one there. And I said, there are no children here. And she said, but there are windows. And I've thought about this, and I could one day move to Denmark, and I'm very attracted to that notion of sharing that. And I think there's a lot of strength. I've seen the same thing in Germany, going up escalators when people know that I'm American, by which side I'm standing on. But for me, it really begs the question of context and transferability. And in looking at a lot of the work that was just presented, there are many principles around physics, which is very exciting to see, and around an observation of nature. Looking at the work in the first set, I could easily see the transferability of process. I'm wondering if each of you could talk a little bit about the Broadway boogie woogie and what happens when you come to New York. That was a conversation that's been brought up. And how does your work transfer between very different realms?
Well, for me personally, it was a lot about new kind of materials that I hadn't explored. It was sort of like living in Tribeca and figuring out that, maybe I never actually spent that much time looking at brass or working that much with stone or hard metal, etc. So it kind of changed a lot. When I started the studio in 2008, I had a huge collection of classical furnitures, and I actually sold all of it. And kind of felt that if I had to start working with the studio and we had to come up with a new kind of Nordic Scandinavian design, I wouldn't want to look at my beautiful PH, or I'm a huge Panton fan and had a bunch of his stuff as well. Some of it I actually stored, but anyway. So it was kind of a process, and going to New York has certainly been trying to combine this tradition we have of craftsmanship and furniture design with a maybe more contemporary New York, something new, trying to add something to it.
And for those that weren't completely clear, your studio is in New York right now.
Well, both.
Yeah. Both. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my studio is not in New York.
And you have transferability.
I hope it will be, but anyhow, it's. If I understand your question correctly, that's just what I wanted to check. It's like, I don't feel my products change.
Okay.
Okay, they work from within, so it was from the inside and out, and it's like these specific projects, I would say, that I've shown you today. So I mean, they could fit in anywhere. Did I understand you correctly then?
Well, if we have streets in Copenhagen and we have streets in New York, the perception of the street is different by the society that is there. And if we have the same design and it's moving between different places,
Yes.
It's a question of what does it mean and what does it mean to your work. And
I'm sure I will be influenced by this very speedy way things are going on in New York. And I think it has its own kind of music when you walk around in the streets. Not only the very different sounds that are noisy all the time, but also the tempo, the people you have to avoid crashing with it on the streets and so on. And I think this is another way of being in a city. And of course, it will influence in some way, I'm sure. But I still feel that design methods, there's not one method. We were talking about that in the last round. There is an infinity number of methods. And I think not even each person do have his own or hers method, but each project need new methods every time. And I mean, it's so different how a design project will be born. Sometimes it takes a few days, sometimes it takes half a life.
Right.
You cannot give a receipt for that, I'm sure.
And to the jazz man, do we have any?
The jazz man, no. I would say that looking at your projects as well, which are dealing with like simple things as gravity, and you can say the gravity is the same all over the world. So that's like it's also what I'm trying to
constant.
work with. Often things that everybody would understand and would understand the idea of it. So I think like if you are working too much like with styling of objects, when it's only a pattern or color or adding an extra layer of something, that you might not be able to transfer to different regions. But if and I think that's one of the point of Danish design, or at least has been, is like it's simple in the way that everybody is able to understand it. So yeah,
Makes a lot of sense.
I agree very much upon that, and I think also we have been seeing that today. Many different approaches, many different projects, but all of them are trying to get into some kind of substance.
Yeah.
It's not about styling. It's not about surface. There is a lot more behind it, and I think that is very, very important.
And talking about the materiality in which you're speaking about, all of the projects, including the paper lamps, have a deep sense of materiality. At the same time, there's a rejection to technologies embedded in them. Not that they're not created from technologies, but they're not in them. Is that an intentional strategy to look at things like the heirloom object, and how does something get passed down, or is it? What are your different thoughts on that? Like why aren't there technologies embedded in these?
I think that for my case, it's a historical explanation, because I and 15 other designers were in 2003 asked by some institutions in Denmark to give up sketches in aluminium. And for me, it's very clear that aluminium is not one material; it's a lot of material, depending on how you are making it. Yeah, are you extruding it? Are you casting it, for example? It gives very different results, very different limitations, very different possibilities. And actually, the bench were an attempt to take out the best from those production methods and combine them in a clear idea. And the idea is it's much more about gravity and user possibilities than about technique in itself.
About the embedded technology beyond that. Amanda?
Yeah. I'll be completely honest with you. and for me personally, it has been a question of actually getting products done. And not having a lot of money, working in paper, which seemed as a good idea, and actually managing to do projects which I could then get out into the world. So first the Clint shade, and then now I could make a new step and actually do something which was more sustainable. And now I think now I want to make it even more sustainable. So now the technology can be implied, because now I've opened up the doors to make it possible, because I have 2 projects behind me, right? So I mean, it's also a question of making it happen when you are a young designer.
Do either of you have any comments about embedded technologies within your products? Embedded technologies in marble bathtubs.
Yeah, we even forgot the overflow. It's a kind of big mistake. I'm having kind of trouble with DOB at the moment for that one. But I found a nice one with lion feet that we'll have there for the DOB to approve, and then we'll come in with the other one. The problem is where we store it. It's kind of heavy. 2,200 pounds, to be exact.
Okay, well, maybe we should invite...
Invite group 1 up. Almost chairs enough.
Can we... And
We'll just
share
have
this?
Yeah, we just... Take care of the lamps.
Yeah.
You just
Well, I'd like to just make an overall comment about the work that we've seen. And we've seen a number of designers who are very mature designers who have been faculty as well. And we see designers who have graduated in 2012 here. The work is extraordinary. So we feel really honored to be able to, even begin this discussion. I'd like to kick it off with Neela to just talk a little bit about these two groupings you made, which are drastically different. I'll pass it to you.
The reason why I made that was that I thought that the last group was actually more connected to traditional design and architecture, especially architecture. Is a lot about additiveness, especially in Amanda and Troels's. It's about, Utzon is additive architecture, how is additive things going into a product design. But it's also about, it's more architectural design, where I think the first group is more process, it's more about, it's not about the object. The object could actually be designed by someone else sometimes. And it's also about Troels and Mads who added technology into their design as a driver. So I think it's two worlds who will probably be melting together, because the last group is also a little bit older, except Johannes, but he's too jazzy. So, that was the reason for it. But I can ask you a question because we have this saying that God sees everything, even the details that no one else will see, right? So I could through the windows, yes. I could start asking you, what is it that you bring back from New York? You've been here a couple of days, and Søren has been there longer. What is the one thing that can actually inspire you, or have you seen something? I mean, personally, I love the street lights, the way they're taking care of one pole doing 50 things right. And it's not French underwear design, it's sort of really bulky design. So that's, every time when I see it, I get so happy I draw it, take it home. So what kind of designs have you been inspired from?
I can start. I just came yesterday evening, 11 o'clock, but I've been there before. One thing, or some things that I always brings back is will be the diversity, and that's something I really love every time, and the life that is just different. But that would be diversity.
I have a question for you. I've heard a lot today about Danish designers coming to New York and how they would function and what they would do, and I think you would all do great here. I'm going to inverse the question. Parsons is the most international school in the United States, possibly the world, I'm unsure. A very diverse population. We have great work coming out of it. But I think the rigor and the quietness that you have happening in Denmark is unique to the world. I've had 3 students say, I would love to work in Copenhagen. They've done summer projects. What would happen if they go to Copenhagen to work? What are their chances of success?
If they should start up themselves, you mean, or
or given Denmark is the third easiest country in the world to start up a business.
Yeah, exactly. I think they have to be.
That's my Wikipedia. Might be second. We have to talk to the experts here.
Yeah, that could be a problem. But I think.
I think they will, like the rest of us, have a hard time.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they want to work as interns for lunch, then they would have huge success.
Okay.
And we welcome them.
Yeah.
I mean, basically that was actually a part of our. I mean, we're very much a group that designs. I mean, it's sort of like if the studio junior designer has the best idea, then we might very well go with that idea. And I think that was my initial thought when I started the studio. That I saw that you have these amazing designers sitting around this table as well. A lot of them, for example, Troels and Johannes and Amanda, works very sort of like Cecilia and Louisa Campbell does as well. They do everything by themselves. They do the prototypes, etc. And I was sort of coming from being a serial entrepreneur and sort of how do you get volume on that? How do you build a business? How do you build a collective or movement about that? And I felt it really difficult. And in the beginning, I really just wanted it was for myself. I wanted to sit down, learn 3D, etc., etc. But then I found out you can't make a business. You can't make a living of it, and that's a huge problem. A lot of the academy designers in Denmark, they live from support by the government and not by royalty from their furnitures. By the way, also because the manufacturer is not paying enough royalty, but that's a completely other discussion, but very important.
Yeah. And can you briefly talk about the work in the 50s and 60s throughout the world was very idealistic about a new world, post-war, accessibility to wealth for many people. Denmark unquestionably is a leader in social equity between peoples, and I think a model for a lot of people. At the same time, that model is a very high model for much of the world. And I think what we've seen in the presentations that you've given are a very large bandwidth, looking at very high design and looking at extreme need. Can you talk a little bit about the middle, not to use the word IKEA, but about what that middle could look like in the world, coming from Denmark or across the planet? Like, what role can we have as designers, or is that really coming from business that's dictating what we work on as designers?
I don't think so. I actually think that if a designer in forehand thinks about how can this sell and how can I get rich for this, about this, I think he will fail. I think we can see here that is true engagement in what you are doing that are the driven factor for every good designer. It has to be. Of course, there will also always be a marketing side, but you cannot think about that from the beginning. But of course, you can think a lot about the user, and I prefer to say the user, not the consumer, because there's a huge difference in the way of thinking between those two words. So you have to think about the daily user. You have to have a lot of empathy to put yourself in other people's place, and I see that in all the projects today, especially maybe in the first round, and I'm so happy to see the young designers here really having a heart, thinking about, feeling about other people, weak people, and so on. I think that is very important. That social empathy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm agreeing about the user-centered design and that point of view, but I also believe that you need to, in many cases, to look at if this is a sustainable business. I think it just fits together. One thing is a good idea, then the user, and then can you sell it or not? And then that's something that we think in right from the beginning. So
before we go on, why don't we take a few questions from the audience, and then we can close out.
We've got somebody over here.
Hi, this comment is more towards the first group, and I would like to say I was really inspired and excited by what I saw. My background is a healthcare marketer, and so the challenge is always how do you position a product, once I have it, and how do we sell it? And oftentimes the challenge is, well, why didn't the designer think of this? And these are the real true needs of the user. And so to really see the process and almost the total immersion that you took as far as really understanding what the needs are of all of the different stakeholders was very promising for me. So I just wanted to commend you on your work. Thank you.
Hi, my comment or my question is also about mostly the first panel, the process involved for a lot of you really getting involved in an industry, access to the hospitals or talking to the telecommunication industry. And I'm wondering if you think that that's something that's unique to the Danish culture, that there's that openness and willingness to open the doors and maybe show you guys mistakes or things that aren't working, and whether that's something that's transferable to America.
Good question.
Do you want to? Yeah, I can answer.
But do you mean from whether the industry is willing to open up and show us, open the doors for us to inspect the
Right, maybe you don't have that much exposure in America, but it seems to me like that's something maybe more uniquely Danish, to have that access than maybe, I don't know who the best to answer this question is, but is that something that...
I can try.
Okay.
I was actually, I've tried to collaborate with other professionals in most projects I've done. And when I started to work with the hospital, I was surprised, and they were surprised that we actually collaborated that well, that we had something to share and we could add something, both me as a designer, but they could add something to my process as well. And I think that it's just getting more and more normal, and we're trained in our education to actually use tools to use our methods together with other professionals. And from my perspective, it's actually, I've seen that within the last couple of years only. In my bachelor, it didn't feel that much as it did the last couple of years.
Yeah, I have a comment on that as well. Wednesday, I met with Tim Brown and Michael Hendricks from IDEO, and I think it happens really much in the States as well. So I think that's at least a huge part of the design industry, and also the manufacturing industry, of course, uses it.
Although I think the question, which is a very interesting question, is from an educational point of view. So at an institution like ours, we would look towards to have what's called an institutional review board, which for undergraduate might be a faculty member that just makes sure that the safe testing with humans is basically safe. And it's a very challenging thing for all institutions. What kind of review process did you go through when you went and I'm assuming we're a witness more than a tester with actual babies. Oh, Amanda, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not quite sure if I understood the exact question, but I think that, well, when I had to, I was quite open to the field. I just contacted several hospitals, and I got a no, and I got another no, and then I got another no, and then I got a yes, and then I think that's how we do it, and I think we are schooled to actually just go forward and just continue in your search for input, because I think the school is very loose also, as I think Nilla said before early on, that you have to kind of define your own education. And if you think that's an important issue, to actually go out and spend time with users. And to me, I think I will be in the dark without actually getting into the people's world that I'm designing for. So to me, I just kept going until you find somebody that says yes. And then you see, as Anna said, that people are often quite willing when they actually see where you're going and where you're heading, and that you are willing to learn from them, then they will allow you to go much further than they maybe thought that you could go. So, yeah.
I think there's one thing, and I think I forgot it in my keynote to start with. We are the happiest people in the world. But we also have something called trust, and maybe we're the last country who have trust. I mean, I can buy things that they will deliver before I pay. I think that's the only world left where you normally have to pay up front. So I think what you experience is that if you get the attention of someone as a student, they open up, and because they trust you, so you can ask all these questions, you can follow it. So I think it's based on the trust system. That you don't need to be a high flyer designer. You can be, a student, and they will let you in.
Can I say?
Yeah.
I was surprised, of course, about collaborating with the user, but I also work with interpreters. I don't know if you know the meaning of interpreters, but people that has insights into what you're doing, but in a totally different field. I can use my own project as an example. When I was making the drawer insert, I needed some kind of dividing system that was very clear and user-friendly for the nurses. And then I actually, when I was paying for gas at the gas station, I was inspired by the way they're separating coins. And I actually called the producer of that drawer insert for coins separations and got a lot of insights that way as well. And I think we often use that kind of inspiration, and not only focusing on users, but also interpreters that can add something interesting into the process.
Yeah, I have less of a question than a sort of a comment, which is I want to echo Rama's point that the work was extraordinarily strong, and strong from the kind of conceptual framing of the problem as a part of the design all the way up to the sort of really sophisticated level of detail and understanding of its manufacturing. I'm also amazed at the sort of structure here where you'd have this number of people being brought over to be able to present in New York City as a representative of a country. I can't imagine America doing that, even though, I mean, so that I just want to point out this sort of, thanks to the country as a way of supporting an idea of the role of design. What I'd like to ask, though, is where is it that you see the possibility for change within Danish culture, or within the economy or within the industries, that would enable projects that are developed as theses to actually be actualized? In other words, move from a kind of concept stage into production, into a material fact where cost becomes a kind of driver. Is that the role of government, or is that the role of industry? Where is that conversation occurring within the educational structures? Because I think that seems to me one of the real challenges of taking a kind of methodology that is an inquiry where you as students can actually open doors that professionals may not be able to do, whereas at the same time professionals have the level of expertise to be able to execute through details, through materials, into a kind of much broader role. In other words, where is your experience coming up against or working with or collaborating with broader systems of industry and government where you think it works really well, and where is it that there's still opportunity within Danish culture to develop?
We had a workshop after our final exam to sort of to just present, because we were in contact with a lot of different people from all the various stakeholders, and of course as we were interested in the beginning of the process, we were really interested in their work, and they of course wanted to follow up and see what it all ended out with. So we had this workshop in the Telecommunication Industry Association in Denmark, where we presented our project and then have an open discussion about how we could sort of push the tele industry in this new direction. And it was really interesting to see how they really agreed on the same challenges, and they were surprised that now they've been sitting behind each their pile of what do you call it, Claire, okay, complaints. Yeah, here we go. They sit behind each their pile of complaints about each other, instead of just, I think if they've just picked up the phone and had a conversation, they would probably have solved much of it. So it was funny to have them in the same room and have this open discussion. And I think it's. I mean, I don't think they'll produce the lamp right away, but I think definitely there have been some bonding between these different stakeholders that we were in contact with.
Yeah, and your question was also about what kind of changes, where we should.
What would you change, implement, or otherwise do that isn't now being done to translate things from a concept stage into production? Is it purely industry's role, or what is the role of government in that fostering of a relationship? Clearly, there's a government support. You are here. It's extraordinary. It's amazing.
Yeah, sure. But of course, it's both from the government and of course from the industry. But also it's about integrating design and innovation and creativity in a much earlier. I mean, we have to integrate that into the society in a much broader way than we have now.
I think it's a steady, slowly and dialectic process, because you cannot change an attitude in a culture in a moment. But I think what the schools are doing are really pointing forward in many ways, because this understanding of holistic thinking, I'm sure that this will be spread out more and more to the whole society, but not by one day or by one project, but by continuing.
Okay. Oh no, and I'm finished. I'm following in the program.
Are you good? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to New York. Thank you, Rama.
Thank you to all our rising stars and to Nille and Rama for moderating this very exciting segment. We are now very close to having gone full circle. It's been a very rich day. We are, however, not going to let you go quite yet, because we're going to invite back up here to the podium our Consulate General of Denmark in New York, Ambassador Jarl Friis Madsen, to try to sum up and give some closing remarks to all of these incredible ideas.
Thank you very much. Just a few months after I arrived in New York, I was speaking at one of our partner institutions today, the American Institute of Architecture, and after I spoke, I told the director, Rick Bell, that I had to leave because on that particular evening I had 2 things that I needed to go to, and his response was only 2. And this was, I thought he was kidding, but this is very New York. It's typical in an evening that you actually have 3 or 4 things that you need to go to. So in that perspective, I think it is incredible that we have had all of you sitting here for 7-8 hours listening in. We really appreciate that. We appreciate having the Dean of Parsons, Joel Towers, the whole day with us, even tonight for the dinner. We look forward to that. Of course, the way that this has been designed by Nille and by Maiken is like when you have Bill Clinton at a conference, you put him at the very end. We had something that was even better. We had the rising stars, and we put them at the end, so if you wanted to get to know them, you had to wait in. Nille's thesis as coming in as director of the Design Center, one of them was to put up the designers, not just talk about design, but actually talk about the designers. Our thesis at the Consulate General is similar in the sense that we have had this burden of the big designers of the 50s, but we had a missing several generations. And then the question was, do we now have a new generation of designers? And I will let the audience answer that by clapping if they feel that we do. I think that the 8 Rising Stars was an incredible inspiration for all of us. We also had the new designers of the Finn Juhl Chamber, Thomas Siesgaard and Kasper Salto, and that means clearly I think we have a new strong generation of Danish designers. Another question is there such thing as a national design? Is there a Danish DNA? And I think Paola Antonelli answered that question. Yes, there is. I mean, we do take things with us from our culture, even through centuries. I think all nationalities do that. One of the Rising Stars, Troels, made that very clear to me, at least, when he said that you start with the light and then you move on to the space and the objects. This is a very Danish way of thinking. This is not necessarily the way that you would be thinking in others. So this is something you take with you from Denmark, but I very much, of course, agree with you. You had Mr. Bakke, as he called himself, Anders, talking about designers' obligations to make the world a little bit better. And you had Johannes talking about the 10% that he spent on not doing that, but that means that you spent 90% on making the world better. And I think that if you look at the challenges in this country, which is not much different from the rest of the world, we've just had a huge debate on the presidential election. Everybody is talking about a fiscal cliff. We're talking about the rising health costs, which is actually half of the budget in the federal budget in the U.S. It's 20% of the GDP in the U.S. And I think that clearly design was shown by both Anne and Tia, that design in life sciences and healthcare can make a tremendous difference. When you saw this lady running around with the trolley and she wasn't even handing out the medicine, I mean, this is just illustrating how much time and energy is wasted in the healthcare system, and we need to do something about that. We of course need to do something about the climate, the energy, and here I'm sure that design will play a huge role. We spoke about methodologies and about design processes, and I think there were several excellent illustrations of that throughout the day, how this plays a major role. One thing that I think was unanswered, at least according to me, is the supply chain, because there were both arguments for producing in the respective countries, but I think that we can still not conclude that that is an effect, that we're rolling back globalization in this sense. And there are certain design projects that will only come into live if you take advantage of the globalized world of productions. Otherwise, it might be too expensive to bring to the market. So it's been a very long day, but it's been an extremely interesting day. I think I'm not going to make it any longer, so I will just finish off by once again thanking Parsons The New School and thanking our cooperation partner, Danish Design Center. And finally, I'm sure you will agree with me in thanking all my colleagues at the Consulate General, who has been working with this project also for many months. Mike and Dano, that you have seen several times, our cultural attaché, our press, Ulla Dubgaard, Maiken Lauritsen, and Henrik Hjort, who is responsible for design in the trade field, and our fantastic interns, Sofus and Kasper and Darshika. With these words, once again, thank you so much for coming, and have a great weekend, the rest of it. Thank you very much.